Men are forever plotting to bind you, to tame your spirit, to turn you into a servant of their designs. But what if I told you that true freedom does not come from rebellion nor from obedience, but from mastering the art of being untouchable? In this video, we will unravel the psychology that ensures no one, not a ruler, not a lover, not even society itself, can ever truly control you. History is littered with chains, visible and invisible. Kings have enslaved nations, priests have shackled minds, and merchants have bound men with debt. Yet beneath these layers of control lies a truth the powerful fear you discovering. The man who understands himself cannot be owned. To see the world as it is, not as they tell you it is to place yourself beyond their grasp. This is not about resistance in the Narva sense, nor about idealistic freedom. It is about power, about learning to move through the world with a mind that cannot be captured, even if your body is confined. Tonight, I will show you the cold path to untouchability. Power is never what it seems. Men believe they are ruled by kings, by laws, by armies, but in truth they are ruled by shadows, by perceptions, by illusions carefully staged to make obedience appear natural. This is the first lesson you must understand if you wish to remain untouchable. No one truly controls you unless you first grant them belief in their authority. Consider this: a king sits on a throne, crowned in gold. Around him stand guards, ministers, executioners. His subjects bow, not because his sword strikes them each day, but because they believe he holds the right to strike. Remove that belief, and the crown is only metal, the throne only wood, the king only a man waiting to be toppled. Authority lives not in the sword, but in the minds of those who kneel before it. Why do men kneel? Fear, habit, the illusion that submission ensures safety. Yet history shows how fragile this illusion is. Think of Louis XVI, King of France, carried to the guillotine by the same crowds that once cheered his power. Did his armies vanish overnight? Did his wealth evaporate in an instant? No. What vanished was the people's faith in his untouchability. Once the illusion cracked, the entire structure of power collapsed like rotten wood. This is the truth your rulers never want you to grasp. Control is a performance. And like every performance, it requires your applause. Not every man faces a king. Yet every man faces manipulation. Your employer convinces you to give more hours for less pay. Why? Because you believe losing that job would destroy you. A lover manipulates your guilt to make you submit. Why? Because you believe their affection is worth chains. Politicians stir outrage and fear to make you follow. Why? Because you believe their words describe reality. Control does not come from their strength, it comes from your belief in their necessity. Now ask yourself, what happens if you strip this belief away? What if you saw authority not as divine, but as a mask worn to frighten children? What if you recognized that most threats are crafted illusions designed to force you into predictable obedience? The moment you see this, their grip begins to slip. Do you remember how empires fall? Not when the walls are breached, but when people cease to believe the walls matter. Rome fell not only from invading tribes, but from rot within. Citizens no longer believed in the Senate, the legions, the gods that sanctified their empire. Once faith dissolved, discipline followed, and the empire crumbled into dust. Psychologists today speak of learned helplessness. State where a man accepts his chains because he no longer believes escape is possible. This is the illusion perfected by tyrants and manipulators alike, to make you think resistance is useless, that your cage is unbreakable. But every cage has cracks. The only question is whether you dare to see them. Think of propaganda, that most refined tool of modern power. Why flood the airwaves with slogans, images, and symbols? Why shape the narrative with constant repetition? Because those in control know that authority survives not on force, but on belief. If enough men believe, the illusion is solid. If enough men doubt, the illusion shatters. And what of you? Do you understand the cage you stand in now? Perhaps it is not forged by kings or generals, but by subtler hands, social expectation, family pressure, cultural norms. How many of your choices are your own, and how many are the echoes of voices that told you what was proper, safe, or acceptable. If you live by their script, then you are already controlled, even if no chains touch your wrists. But here lies the liberation. Once you see the performance for what it is, once you strip the mask from the actor, you discover the stage is empty. The king is only a man. The manipulator is only desperate. The tyrant is only afraid. Authority collapses when belief dissolves. And so the first weapon you must sharpen is perception. To see the illusion, to refuse the role of obedient spectator, is to reclaim yourself. No one can rule a man who does not kneel, no matter how gilded the throne before him. Yet perception alone is not enough. To remain untouchable, you must go further. You must master the second layer of freedom, the ability to sever the emotional chains that bind you tighter than any iron shackles. The strongest chains are not forged from iron. They are woven from emotion, fear, desire, affection, guilt. These are the invisible bonds by which most men are led, like cattle to slaughter, believing themselves free while every choice is dictated by the passions of the moment. If you wish to be beyond control, you must first sever these chains. You must master detachment. Consider fear. It is the oldest weapon of rulers. A tyrant need not strike you if he can make you imagine the strike. The Inquisition burned fewer heretics than it frightened into silence. Stalin executed thousands, but millions obeyed from the terror of becoming one of them. Fear expands in the mind like smoke, filling every chamber until men mistake shadows for threats. And yet, when a man learns to look at fear coldly, to weigh the risk, to measure the cost, its power dissolves. Now turn to desire. Entire kingdoms have fallen not because of armies, but because of lust, greed, the hunger for approval. Consider Helen of Troy, for whom kings and warriors slaughtered each other. Was she worth 10 years of bloodshed? Of course not. But desire blinds reason. It magnifies trivial things until men destroy themselves, chasing illusions. If you can discipline desire, if you can step back and see it as passing wind, you gain a strength most never touch. And then there is affection. The most cunning manipulators exploit not your fears, but your love. How often has a man bent his will because he feared losing the affection of wife, lover, or friend? Families hold power over sons and daughters not because of logic, but because of guilt. Because love is laced with the terror of withdrawal. To detach does not mean to abandon love, but to refuse enslavement to it. The man who can love without being ruled by love is unshakable. Do you see the pattern? Every force of control flows first through your emotions. The employer guilts you with loyalty. The politician frightens you with danger. The lover tempts you with abandonment. The crowd seduces you with praise. And each time, you yield because you cannot separate what is felt from what is real. But the man of power is cold in judgment. He feels, but does not obey the feeling. He treats his own emotions as servants, not masters. Think of Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome. Surrounded by betrayal, war, and plague, he wrote not of anger, not of despair, but of discipline, reminding himself daily that pain and fear are nothing more than impressions of the mind. This is why his rule endured. He governed not only the empire, but himself. And contrast him with Nero, consumed by his passions, killing his mother, burning his city, sinking into paranoia until he became a slave to his own desires. Which of these men was free? Which of these men was truly controlled? Psychologists speak today of emotional regulation, the ability to pause, observe, and direct your feelings instead of reacting blindly. Do you realize how rare this is? Most people explode when angered, collapse when frightened, submit when flattered. They are puppets, strings pulled by anyone clever enough to provoke the right emotion. What happens when you cut the strings? What happens when insults no longer stir you, when threats no longer terrify you, when seduction no longer blinds you? You become unreadable, and the unreadable man is untouchable. Imagine your rival trying to sway you with anger, only to find you unmoved. Imagine a superior attempting to frighten you, only to see you calculating coldly. Imagine a lover seeking to guilt you, only to watch you smile with calm distance. Their tools break in their hands, for they strike at emptiness. But understand, this detachment does not mean numbness. A man without feeling is a corpse, not a strategist. Detachment means using emotion as one uses fire, controlled, contained, a servant to your will. Anger, when unleashed deliberately, can terrify. Desire, when directed strategically, can build alliances. Fear, when acknowledged but mastered, can sharpen caution. You do not destroy your emotions, you command them. The weak man is carried by the storm. The strong man sails it. Now I ask you, how often have you betrayed your own reason for the sake of a passing emotion? How often have you looked back with regret, realizing you acted not with strategy but with weakness? Every regret is a reminder that you served your feelings rather than yourself. The world belongs not to those who feel the most, but to those who feel and yet remain unmoved. He who governs his heart governs his fate, and this mastery leads us to the next shield of freedom, the art of concealment. For once you master yourself, you must ensure no one else can read you, no one else can seize upon your hidden desires. A man is never more vulnerable than when his soul is exposed. The moment others know your true desires, your fears, your secret ambitions, you have already surrendered the keys to your cage. To remain untouchable, you must cultivate opacity. You must learn to be unreadable, a riddle without an answer, a mask that conceals more than it reveals. Consider the great manipulators of history. They thrived not by brute force, but by reading others. Cesare Borgia could glance into a man's eyes and see his weakness, pride, vanity, lust, insecurity, and use it as a lever. His enemies believed they understood him, but they did not. He revealed only fragments, never the whole picture, always holding back the core of his intentions. This is why he commanded fear and respect. Now ask yourself, how easy are you to read? Do your eyes betray irritation when challenged? Do your words reveal your hunger for approval? Do your gestures expose your need to belong? If so, you are an open book, useful to others, powerless to yourself. Think of poker. The best player is not the one with the strongest hand, but the one whose face betrays nothing. Opponents cannot tell if he holds victory or ruin. This uncertainty is power. For while they hesitate, while they doubt, he controls the game. Life itself is no different. When others cannot predict your next move, they cannot control your outcome. Opacity does not mean silence. The silent man can be dismissed as weak, confused, or dull. Strategic opacity means speaking just enough to mislead, to cloak your intentions in ambiguity, to give the impression of openness while concealing the essence. It is not about being mute, it is about being unreadable. History provides endless lessons. Think of Elizabeth I of England, the Virgin Queen. She surrounded herself with suitors, diplomats, and courtiers, each believing they had her favor. She promised much, committed little, and left everyone uncertain of her true heart. This uncertainty preserved her throne. Had she bound herself openly to one alliance, she would have created enemies from the rest. Her mask of ambiguity was her armor. Psychology confirms this. Humans crave predictability. They fear what they cannot read. An opaque man unsettles others, for he refuses to provide the usual cues of weakness. They will project their assumptions upon him, revealing more about themselves than they ever learn about him. He remains the mirror, reflecting their own desires back at them, while his own remain hidden. But opacity requires discipline. Do you rush to defend yourself when accused? Do you feel compelled to justify your actions? Every word you spill becomes a weapon for another's hand. When you explain too much, you teach others how to strike you. The wise man answers with measured calm, offering nothing of value, letting others drown in their assumptions. Think of interrogation. The torturer seeks not only confessions but signs. Hesitation, trembling, the flicker of fear. The prisoner who reveals nothing but calm defiance cannot be broken, for the tormentor finds no entry point. Even in silence, the opaque man is stronger than the desperate one who speaks. Now consider your daily life. A colleague pries into your ambitions. Do you reveal them openly or cloak them in misdirection? A rival seeks to provoke you. Do you flare with anger or smile with unreadable calm? A lover demands to know your every thought. Do you spill your soul or reveal only what strengthens your position? Control rests in the man who withholds. Do you recall Sun Tzu's warning? Be formless, like water. The opaque man is formless. He flows where needed, adapts without revealing essence, and strikes from concealment. The enemy cannot strike what he cannot see. But beware, opacity must not become isolation. A wall too thick invites suspicion, and suspicion breeds enemies. The art lies in balance, revealing just enough to appear open while concealing the core of your truth. Give them smoke, not fire. Offer them shadows, not substance. Let them think they understand you, even as they grasp at nothing. When people cannot predict you, they cannot command you. When they cannot see your weakness, they cannot exploit it. And when they cannot cage your soul, you remain untouchable. Yet concealment is not enough. For even the opaque man may find himself surrounded by those who depend on him, seeking to bind him with obligations. To be free, you must go further. You must ensure that dependence serves you, not enslaves you. Freedom is not found in cutting every tie. A man who stands alone, without allies, without networks, is not free. He is vulnerable. True freedom comes when others depend on you, when their survival, their comfort, their ambitions are tied to your will. Dependency is the leash you place around their neck, and the moment you learn to wield it, you become the master of the relationship. Consider the rulers of history. They did not hold power simply because of armies or laws. They held power because others could not live without them. The prince who controls food controls the starving masses. The banker who holds the gold dictates terms to kings. The general who alone can command the loyalty of soldiers wields power greater than any crown. Do you see the pattern? Dependency turns men into prisoners who guard their own cages. Look at the Medici of Florence. They were not kings, yet they ruled as kings. Why? Because half of Florence owed them money, and the other half sought their favor. Men who depend on you for wealth, protection, or opportunity will tolerate insults, betrayals, even cruelty. They will bend their pride because their survival requires your hand. Now ask yourself, who depends on you? And more dangerously, on whom do you depend? For every chain that binds another to you, there may be one around your own throat. The man who relies too heavily on his master, his employer, his lover, or even his friend is already a servant in disguise. Think of relationships in daily life. A lover who knows you cannot bear their absence will manipulate you endlessly. An employer who senses you fear unemployment will exploit you for every hour and coin. A friend who knows you crave approval will bend your loyalty to his advantage. In each case, the dependent party becomes the slave. But imagine the reverse. Imagine the lover who knows you can walk away at any moment, while they cannot. Imagine the employer who fears losing your talent more than you fear losing the position. Imagine the friend who needs your counsel, your resources, your presence more than you need his. Now the leash is in your hand. This is the cold reality. Dependence always exists. The question is not whether it is present, but who holds the advantage. Psychologists speak of power imbalance in human relationships. But imbalance is not a flaw. It is the natural state of power. The wise man does not seek equality. He seeks leverage, and leverage is born when others cannot do without you. Consider how rulers weaponize necessity. Bread and circuses in Rome kept the mob pacified, not because Caesar loved the people, but because he ensured they relied on him for sustenance and amusement. When the mob depends on you for survival, rebellion becomes unthinkable. Think also of modern leaders. Corporations tie customers to them with subscriptions, addictions, and convenience. Entire populations remain shackled because they cannot imagine life without the very hand that exploits them. This is not coincidence. It is strategy, and you too can practice this art. Build skills others cannot replace. Provide value others cannot match. Create networks that crumble without your presence. When people look at you and see the cornerstone of their survival, they will hesitate to strike you, even if they despise you. But here lies the danger: never let dependence chain you. If you tie your life too tightly to one patron, one employer, one partner, you have given away the key to your prison. The man who is truly free ensures that while others lean upon him, he can walk away from all without collapse. Self-sufficiency is the foundation, dependence of others is the fortress. Think of Machiavelli's warning, "It is better to be feared than loved," if you cannot be both. Why? Because love breeds expectation, but fear breeds reliance. When men fear to lose what only you can provide, they cling to you with desperation. And desperation is the truest leash. So ask yourself again, who needs you more than you need them? That is where your power lies. And who do you need more than they need you? That is where you are enslaved. To shift these scales is to shift your fate, yet there remains a deeper fortress still. The one no leash, no manipulator, no ruler can penetrate. Even if every tie breaks, even if you are stripped bare, the man who governs his own mind remains untouchable. And this final sovereignty is what we confront next, the power of inner rule. There is one fortress no army can storm, no tyrant can breach, no manipulator can corrupt. It is not a castle, nor a throne, nor a treasury. It is the mind governed by itself. A man who rules his own thoughts cannot be ruled by others. This is inner sovereignty, the final shield, the one power that renders you untouchable. History proves it. Think of Socrates. Condemned to death, surrounded by enemies, stripped of freedom, yet untouchable. They could chain his body, poison his veins, but they could not enslave his mind. He faced death with calm irony, while his accusers trembled in their own corruption. Who, then, was the true prisoner? Or think of Epictetus, born a slave. His master could beat him, humiliate him, command his body. Yet Epictetus declared, "You may fetter my leg, but not my will." This was not bravado, it was strategy. By mastering himself, he inverted the balance. His master depended on obedience, but Epictetus depended on nothing outside his own judgment. Who, in truth, held power? This is the paradox. Your rulers dread a man may be caged, but if his mind remains sovereign, he cannot be broken. Now turn the question upon yourself. How often are you ruled not by kings, but by your own restless impulses? How many times have you betrayed yourself to distraction, envy, fear? Most men are slaves long before a tyrant arrives, because they cannot govern their own desires. They are ruled by hunger, lust, vanity, and every passing thought that commands them. But imagine the reverse. Imagine standing in the midst of chaos, insults hurled, threats whispered, temptations offered, and remaining unmoved. Imagine choosing with cold precision, while others drown in passion. That is sovereignty. That is command of the one kingdom no one can invade. Psychologists today call this self-mastery. Stoics called it discipline of the soul. Strategists call it invulnerability. But the principle is the same. The mind that governs itself is a fortress without gates. Do you see now why so many seek to colonize your thoughts? Propaganda, advertising, politics, all are designed to make you think their thoughts as your own. To implant desires not born from your reason, to stir fears not weighed by your judgment. Once you internalize their voice, they no longer need chains. You become your own jailer. And yet, the opposite is also true. The man who controls his own thoughts can turn chains into ornaments, poverty into freedom, exile into power. Consider Marcus Aurelius. Besieged by betrayal, plagued by war, he wrote that nothing outside the soul has the power to wound it. His enemies could attack his body, his throne, even his empire. But they could not seize his inner rule. Inner sovereignty is not indifference. It is command. It does not mean you ignore the world, but that you choose how to engage it. You decide when to fight, when to retreat, when to strike. Your will, not their noise, dictates the field of battle. Ask yourself who governs you now. Is it truly you, or is it the endless current of influences pressing against your mind? Every time you react without thought, you have surrendered the throne. Every time you lash out, despair, or chase distraction blindly, you abdicate sovereignty. And when you do, you make yourself a servant, not of kings. The path is not easy. To rule yourself is harder than to rule a city. Armies obey commands. Passions resist. But the victory is worth more than gold or crowns. For when you govern yourself, no one else can govern you. The prisoner who possesses this sovereignty may sleep in chains, yet be freer than his jailer. The pauper who commands his desires may stand prouder than a king consumed by greed. The man who owns his mind owns his fate. So I ask you, will you rule, or will you be ruled? For even after stripping away illusions, mastering emotion, concealing your soul, and turning dependence to leverage, without sovereignty of the mind, all else collapses. This is the final fortress. Conquer it, and no force on earth can touch you. Fail, and you remain a puppet, dancing on strings unseen. And now, having uncovered the shields of freedom, we turn to the darker question, not how to avoid being controlled, but how to wield these very principles to control others. Power does not come from shouting commands. It comes from silence, from shaping the thoughts of others so they act as if by their own will. The greatest chains are invisible. The clever ruler does not say, "Obey me." He makes men believe obedience is their idea. Remember what you have learned: illusions shape reality. Emotions enslave unless mastered. Concealment protects you more than any wall. Dependence binds others while freeing you. And sovereignty of the mind is the final fortress no one can breach. So ask yourself, are you still a servant of the illusions around you? Or are you learning to weave the illusions that others will follow? Those who control without appearing to control are the true masters of this world. They need not raise their voice. They need only guide belief. Now, if you have the ambition to rise above the herd, leave your thoughts below. Subscribe if you wish to sharpen your mind with strategies most men fear to hear. And share this with those bold enough to face the truth.